Hey there, welcome to the first episode of the Vibrant Visuals Bootcamp, an unofficial guide to all things vibrant visuals. And in this video, we're going to go over one of the major portions of vibrant visuals, being the first part being PBR texturing. I think a lot of people underestimate how important good PBR textures are to their packs, and they kind of just let them slack a bit, whether it's because they just don't care or because they don't know how to do it. So I would like this part to go over that and help people understand how it all works and the best ways to do things based on how I do things, which is far from efficient, but the results are there. So get your photo editing softwares / texture creation programs open and get ready to learn. Just a quick disclaimer, most of what I work with is Adobe products, so most of what I'm going to be showing off is within Photoshop and Adobe Substance Designer. There are free alternatives that I highly recommend, such as GIMP and, what was it? Instamat, I think is what it was called, which is very similar to Substance Designer. For GIMP, you can get a Photoshop plugin that changes it to look a lot like Photoshop. I believe it has all the keybinds and everything too. So I highly recommend that if you can't pay for Adobe products. So we're going to go over a few different texture types in this portion. A standard material, just your regular block. We're going to go over a metallic object, a reflective non-metallic object, and some kind of foliage that you would put subsurface scattering on. I will explain all of this when we get to it. But for this part, we're going to start by going over just a regular texture. In this case, we're going to do the grass top material. And I'm going to drag this into Photoshop here. So I highly recommend already having a resource pack set up. If you don't know how to do that, I would recommend looking up how to set up a resource pack from the Microsoft guides. Those will help you figure out where to put your packs, how to access them, and all that fun stuff. I'll also link it down below. So here we have our grass texture imported into Photoshop. I'm going to go over two different ways you can make textures here, which will consist of hand making them and also procedurally doing them in a thing like Substance Designer. So we have 3 color channels here under the channels tab: red, green, and blue. Each of these correspond to a different portion of the PBR system. Red represents metalness. Green represents the emissive factor, so how much it glows. Blue determines how rough an object is. The less roughness, the more reflective the object will be. Now you might be wondering, whoa. Roughness controls how reflective something is, not metalness? Yes. So, hey there, so my initial explanation was really bad, so I'm voicing over this in post. I was basically trying to explain why metals are darkened in the engine, and I didn't explain it very well. So basically, they get darkened because in the engine, they're not supposed to have a diffuse component. What is diffuse lighting? Diffuse lighting is just standard lighting that is applied to a surface. Metals aren't supposed to have that. That is why it's darkening rather than reflection. But let's just go over what we want here. Grass. So, you don't want metallic grass. That just doesn't make sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our color to black, set our brush to 5,000 pixels, and just fill in the whole thing. You might be wondering as well why my texture is so big. My custom resource pack is 128 by 128, so I work with larger texture sizes, but this still applies to 16 by 16. So we also don't want grass to be glowing, right? So set green to black. Now here's where we get into some interesting parts. This is where we get into the roughness factor. So, here I pulled up levels. We're not going to use that yet. Just muscle memory. We're going to take a look at this here. So you would think, right, the white pixels would be more reflective than the dark pixels. That's the thought. So let us just go ahead and make a sample roughness map that does exactly that. So you're going to press Control L on your keyboard and you'll pull up the levels here. This is honestly just the easiest way to do it, especially for a texture with a lot of variation like this. We're just going to drag these around like this and something like that, and then set the darkest input to be about here because we don't want it to reflect. We don't want it to get much reflections. It can reflect the sunlight directly, but we do not want it to have actual reflections. Like, we don't want it to reflect blocks and stuff. So, like, let's set it around, like, maybe here. Yeah, this looks alright. Alright, there we go. We have a roughness map made. And now we have this texture. And we're going to press Control, Alt, Shift, and W to pull up the export tab. And then we're just going to click export. And then just rename this, honestly, whatever you want. But for consistency, I'm going to call it grasstop_mer. And we're going to press OK. Now we have this. And you're probably wondering, well, how do I use it in game? Well, that's what we're going to explain now. So you're going to need to make a file called a texture set, which as you can see right here, we have grass_top.texture_set.json. Once you make that, it'll open up one of these. And there's a few things you're going to need to type in. First, I will leave this pasted down below in the pinned comment. Or no, I don't know. You'll find it at the end of the video somewhere. I'm going to put the sample for this in the pack. But basically what you need is what's written here. So we have a format version, which explains which version of the textures to use. Then we have Minecraft texture set, and then a bracket. Then we have color. This determines the base color of the object, which we're going to want to rename this to grass_top. Then we have metalness, emissive, roughness, subsurface. Rename that to the texture that you created, grass_top, MER, and we're going to remove the subsurface tag. Not needed. Oh, I should mention, you can open this in any video editor. It does not have to be video editor, any text editor. It doesn't have to be Visual Studio Code. It's just what I'm using because everything is all nice and organized right here for my usage. We're going to remove this normal tag for now, but we're going to need that in a few. Now we've just made a basic grasstop MER, and we can load it up inside of Minecraft. Alright, now we are here within Minecraft, and as you can see, we've got all my previous textures, and the one that we just made. But you might notice that the one we've just made looks a little strange. And if you know why it might be strange, you might have noticed something, but the way that roughness works is not in the way that you thought it did. So when we jump back over to Photoshop, if I can find it, we made it so the bright pixels are white, which means they are very rough and will not reflect anything. So you're going to want to invert the image. You're going to want to invert your blue channel before working on it. So to do that, you're going to press Control I, and now everything will look like this. We're going to need to turn the lowest levels up to about, let's go with like 170, and then the highest part to 255, and then drag the highest point up. Alright, now back in game, the texture looks a lot more normal. It looks much better, and it has much more defined details within it, rather than looking all backwards and strange like it did before. So that's kind of one thing you just want to keep in mind when making MER maps. You'd want to make sure that each texture, or you want to make sure you know what each part is being mapped to and how it's being mapped to that location. Just always remember, invert the blue channel. There's some textures that you can get away with not inverting the blue channel. I don't really find many that it looks good on, but there are some that you can, like, invert it and it works fairly well. I think calcite is one that you can kind of interchangeably do. I know gold. Gold I will also invert sometimes. It depends. So now you might be wondering, well, how do I get the bumps on my texture? That is kind of more tricky because it depends on what you're doing. Now, what you can do is you can make a height map, which let's drag grass top just back in here so we have the grayscale version. And all a height map is just a grayscale texture, so we can and then here in your texture set, you're going to add height map in here and then link it to your texture. So grass underscore top underscore height map. This is what I recommend doing as a beginner. Height maps are simple to make. They are easy to do. And you can make them pretty quick. I highly recommend not grayscaling the texture and just using it. I recommend going and doing what I did, where you drag the sliders around. I would say also go in there, do some hand intervention. But yeah, here we are. We've got some bumps on the texture. Now, one thing I will note is this will look a lot better on a 16 by 16 texture than it does on a 128 by 128. I do not recommend using height maps on anything above 16 by 16. It just doesn't look good. So on that note, let's go over one of the other aspects of PBR. I'm going to kind of go through this a little quicker because you already know the basics. But we are going to make a metallic texture, a non-metallic reflective texture, and then a subsurface scattering texture. So lock in, we're going to be going through this kind of quick. All right, so we're back in Photoshop here, and we are going to let's do gold. Do a gold material here. And for this one, I'm going to touch on it a bit in Substance Designer so you can at least see why I like using it. However, this tutorial is not focused on Substance Designer. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of Substance. So here in Substance Designer, there's basically a bunch of nodes that you can use. I have a graph pre-made. I'm not going to go over how to make a graph, as there's just not enough time in this video for this video to go over absolutely everything that I like to do within Substance Designer. But why I like it so much is because you get these live previews of everything that you're working on. It's awesome. Here you can make the object really smooth and just see how this could interact in-game. And usually it does translate over pretty darn well into the main game. Usually for gold and stuff like this, I like to make custom alphas. Or well, I call them custom alphas. They're not exactly alphas, but like, to also explain what an alpha is. An alpha is basically a grayscale texture that goes into your alpha channel. I tend to use that term as like a blanket term to just explain like masks. Essentially, I like to make a mask, and then with said mask, I'll go and bring it into something else. Usually, um, I just don't have enough time to fully go over Substance Designer, but here's just a quick rundown of why I like it. Okay, so back here in Photoshop, we are going to be doing a few things. We're going to need the eyedropper tool, which is not selected by default. By default, it is the object selection tool. So from there, you're going to click and hold on this button, and then grab the magic wand tool. From the magic wand tool, we need to go to the top of the screen and make sure tolerance is at 0, anti-alias is off, and contiguous is also disabled. Or else you'll get it grabbing pixels you don't want. And then, once we're done with this, once you have that set up, we are going to make a mask, basically. So we're going to mask out everything onto their own set of colors. That way we can get results that we want out of our roughness map, because the problem here is roughness is really, really tricky to do. You need to make sure all of your colors are in the right spots, or things will just end up not looking right, or just looking bad in general. So you want to make sure all of your colors are defined in very nice and clean ways. So we're just going to kind of make a big difference between that color, and then just kind of start going from here, slowly decreasing the amount, like slowly changing the color here until we have every color kind of separated into its own separate color into this one grayscale image. I'm going to jump over here to the red channel real quick, and we're going to invert this with Control I, and then bring the lowest points up a lot. And make sure the highest point is there. You know the drill. Gold should be very metallic, as, well, gold is a metal, so gold should be very metallic. Gold should not be emissive, so we get rid of the green channel. Now, to the blue channel, we also do not need to invert this one, because we inverted it ourselves while we were drawing that out. So set the lowest point of the image to about 30. We'll do about 30. 30 should be okay. And you want to bring the highest point, because this is a reflective material, we want to bring the highest point down a lot. And then just alright, now once you're in game, you've got your gold texture that you just made. And if you followed my guide, it will look pretty much exactly like this, without the normal map that's placed on it. So the edges here are much less shiny and they don't reflect the skybox as much as the rest of it does. So they're a bit lighter in color, and then you've got the rest of it doing all its fun stuff, like reflecting the sunlight off of it. And if you place a block on it, you can see said block reflecting off of the metal. It's pretty cool. As much as people love shiny stuff, don't overdo it. You don't want to overdo it on a lot of blocks. Like, you just want to do it on things that make sense to have it, in my opinion. You don't want to just go out there and make things shiny just because, ooh, shiny. Let's go over, you know what, let's do a subsurface let's just do the last part, the subsurface scattering. How you would do, I'll just quickly break it down. So, a non-metallic block like these, which are not metallic, to get them to reflect, you just need to set your roughness rather low. I think in Vibrant Visuals, the roughness cutoff is around 150 at the highest end, down to 0. So anything that is, I believe, 150 to or 140, I think it's 140. Anything below 140 will have reflections applied to them, like so. But a lot of people struggle with subsurface scattering, so we're gonna just go over this and explain how to do it, because it's quite a lot to understand, and there's a lot that goes into it. So I'll be there in 1 second. All right, so back in Photoshop here, we are not going to be working with the grass. It's just what I had open. We need to go through and make a subsurface map for leaves. And I'm going to show you guys exactly how to do that. There's a few ways. One is through using a targa file, which basically allows you to just make an alpha channel right here, and then it just gets saved in the detexture. It's really easy, but it is not efficient for file size. The file size is not super important with a small pack, but you never know when you need to actually compress your stuff and make sure everything is at a reasonable size, especially when you're doing PBR textures, because there's a lot of extra textures. You need at least one extra texture per texture. 2 if you want to do height maps and normals, which I do recommend. It just makes the pack better, in my opinion. But basically what we are going to be doing is showing you how you can make an alpha channel in a PNG while storing the color data, because that is a big problem people run into. They don't know how to. A lot of people are like, how do I get the alpha channel into a PNG? How do I do that? And this is just going to be the quick nitty-gritty on how to do it in Photoshop, as well as storing the color information so none of your stuff gets all messed up. So, right here, this isn't going to get messed up if we use this as is, but just to be safe, I'm going to make a hue saturation layer, drag this over so it's fully gray, and then hold Control to select both of these, and then combine them with Control E. Next, what we're going to do is duplicate this layer with Control C, Control V, just duplicate the layer, and shut off the top layer. And then on this bottom layer, we're just going to do our MER work like normal. So I'm just going to quickly go through this and delete all of those. It's just going to be, it's just going to be your usual, what we've been doing the last few textures of just dragging out the levels node till this looks good and then calling it there. So now we're done with that and we get over to this texture, which from this texture this is going to be our alpha channel. This texture is representing our alpha channel. And getting it to store the color information is the fun part. Like, this is where
fun begins.
This is where we are going. This is where people get tripped up a lot, and that's where I plan to ease this. We are going to just do like normal, just some levels adjustments, dragging these out. However, these are leaves, which leaves scatter a lot. They do not, so you don't want a lot of variation in your texture. Believe it or not, there is a such thing as too much variation to where it looks bad. So leaves can be kind of just put together like so. And yeah, well, I'll just say, yeah, this looks good. I have a rough idea of how this will look in game. This is a pretty solid amount. We're going to need to make a blank layer. So go to the right side of the screen, and near the bottom, you're going to see this little plus icon. I'm going to click that. And then from there, we're going to have this empty layer. Not useful yet, but will be in a second. Right click your grayscale texture here, and then go to blending options. Now, we need to use a specific type of layer style here to blend the colors together. This whole thing is known as a layer style. And from down here, we have blend if gray. Now, if you just grab the little nugget here, I don't know what it's actually called, but if you just grab the little nugget and then drag it across, as you can see, it just deletes the information. You don't want that. So, How do we get around that? Hold down Alt, left click, and then drag. And then it will preserve the color information, essentially. So it converts your colors into a opacity layer, essentially. All this is doing is turning this, we're making an alpha channel. And then we need to mix this with the main channel to store the alpha information, because if we go and do the next step, it'll just delete the colors from the previous layer or put them on the wrong like set. So we want to then drag that underneath your MER, right? Get your hue saturation layer going, or hue saturation layer. You need to right click this, go to create clipping mask, and now the alpha will just get fused into the MER without losing any information. All information is preserved. You don't need to use a target file, and you're good. However, this is harder to edit. If you want to make changes to this, you will have to reverse your opacity output by blending it with a white output, which will require you to go in and delete the two other color channels again. The red and green channels, you'll have to set those to black again, and probably make a few adjustments to your roughness channel. However, this saves on image size if you're going with a higher res texture pack. So yeah, we're going to save this or export it if you aren't using a pre-made MER like I am. I'm just using an MER layer here, so I can just quickly save it and get back in game. But basically, if you're not doing that, you're going to want to export it. Oh, I'm forgetting something. Something very important. In the texture set, you cannot use subsurface scattering if you just have metalness, emissive roughness selected. You're going to want to add the underscore subsurface to access subsurface scattering. If you do not do that, you cannot use it. Keep that in mind. And if you haven't, make sure you leave your game, rejoin. There is no hot reload key. I wish there was. Mojang, please. But yes, now once you're in game, your results on how this will look will vary based on how you have your pack set up. So what I'm showing here may not look the same for you based on your Vibrant Visuals settings that we will go over in the next part. The next part will focus on the lighting aspects and how to improve various things. But basically, as you can see here, the leaves kind of like let some light get through, and they get illuminated from within. That is subsurface scattering. I can show you a quick real-life example of subsurface scattering, which is essentially, if I grab my phone here and I turn my flashlight on and put it up to my hand, boom, that right there is subsurface scattering in real life. And yeah, that's going to do it for the PBR tutorial. I would have loved to go more in depth into this, but I'm going to save that for a more focused tutorial based around making more accurate materials and whatnot, if I ever get the time to do that. However, if you want to get more information on this stuff ever, I stream not constantly or consistently, but I usually will stream myself working on this stuff over on my Twitch at twitch.tv/quirkyplague. I will have that linked in the description. I'm not going to promote any more than that. But yeah, I will talk about basically all of this stuff there live, and we'll also answer any questions. But yeah, that's going to do it for this tutorial. The next part will be focused on lighting and atmosphere. So that's going to do it. See y'all in the next one.